Have you ever stood on a tee box, stared down the fairway, and felt like the landscape itself was actively plotting against you? Like it wasn't just a stretch of grass but a puzzle that was daring you to solve it? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're exploring the fascinating world of the architects who fundamentally changed the entire conversation around golf course design. We are digging into the monumental legacy of Pete and Alice Dye. Pete Dye didn't just build fairways and bunkers. He totally re-engineered the way golfers and future architects actually think about the game.
Pete Dye famously said, "Golf is a game of confidence. A golf course should challenge that confidence, but never destroy it." I absolutely love that quote because it immediately sets up his core psychological mindset. He knew that the game isn't won just by striking a great golf shot. It's won in the mind. He wanted his courses to test your internal struggle, riding that really fine line between creating a thrilling challenge and avoiding total discouragement.
Okay, let's dive into this. If we were filling out a scorecard on Pete Dye's career, he's easily pulling 5-star ratings across the board for innovation, strategic influence, championship legacy, architectural vision, and lasting impact. We are talking about 6 decades of innovation here. Hundreds of championship courses worldwide, an induction into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2008, his credentials are just undeniable. But to really understand why he earns those 5 stars, we have to unpack his actual philosophy and look at what the golfing world was like before he showed up.
Section 1. Redefining golf course architecture, from scenery to a conant. To really grasp how Pete shifted the sport away from these familiar static measurements, you have to look at the contrast between eras. Before Pete Dye came along, golfers often viewed a course as, well, scenery. It was judged by really basic metrics. How long is it? How difficult is it? How many bunkers are guarding the green? But after Pete Dye, everything changed. He transformed the golf course into an opponent. He turned the architecture into an actual conversation between the designer and the player. Suddenly, a bunker wasn't just there to punish a bad swing. It was placed exactly there to influence your decision before you even took the club out of your bag. Every angle rewarded thoughtful play. He made the course ask you questions.
Section 2. The philosophy of choice, making every decision meaningful.
Pete wasn't interested in creating impossible golf that just embarrassed people. He wanted to engage every single golfer, from the touring pro to the weekend foursome. So he asks you, point blank, should I play safe or take the chance? Have you ever felt that exact psychological pressure, that internal tug of war in your head? That is precisely the dilemma Pete Dye famously forced onto players. He believed that every golfer deserves choices, and great architecture just makes every single one of those choices meaningful. It is all about strategy over striking. And that dynamic creates a very clear internal progression for the player. Step 1, you have to think. Step 2, imagine the shot. Step 3, actually commit to it. And Step 4, trust yourself. By the time you finish 18 holes on one of his designs, you realize something pretty profound. The course hasn't just tested your physical swing. Real golf tests your patience, it tests your discipline, your imagination, and your willingness to commit to a choice.
Section 3. Alice Dye's influence, the quiet genius beside the genius.
Now, you absolutely cannot talk about Pete Dye's legacy without talking about Alice Dye. She was his indispensable wife, his closest advisor, and honestly, his creative equal. Pete was the kind of guy who saw wild possibilities. He imagined bold, dramatic carries over water and just loved visual intimidation. But Alice saw consequences. As an incredibly accomplished amateur golfer herself, she would look at a design and say, okay, but would a shorter hitter still have options here? Does the average golfer actually have a realistic chance? She grounded Pete's wild visions to make sure that the strategy remained fair and playable. In fact, Pete frequently admitted that a lot of the brilliant ideas credited to him were actually refined or completely thought up by Alice. They really proved that the absolute best designs happen when wild creativity and realistic perspective work side by side.
Section 4. A classroom without walls, teaching through design.
So how exactly did Pete and Alice pass on this revolutionary knowledge? It's super fascinating because Pete never wrote lengthy textbooks, and he certainly never opened a formal university program. Instead, his golf courses literally became his classroom. You have these legendary study grounds: Harbor Town, TPC Sawgrass, Whistling Straits, Crooked Stick, PGA West. Young architects would physically walk these landscapes carrying notebooks. They'd study TPC Sawgrass one hole at a time. They'd take in the massive scale of Whistling Straits, just trying to reverse engineer why these physical spaces demanded such different thinking from the golfer. And because of that physical, hands-on approach to learning, his legacy wasn't about demanding imitation. It was about inspiring independent thinkers. Today, top architects like Tom Doak and the duo of Core and Crenshaw have openly embraced the importance of the strategic architecture that Pete championed. They developed their own highly individual voices, of course, but the echoes of Pete Dye's philosophy are undeniably woven through their incredible work.
Section 5. An enduring legacy, the timeless vocabulary of golf.
This is where we see how the Dye philosophy permanently altered the everyday language of the sport we love. Concepts like course management, risk versus reward, playing to angles, accepting a longer shot just to get a better approach, choosing discipline over aggression. We hear these phrases every single weekend, whether we're at a public course, a private club, or watching a major broadcast. But here's the kicker. Decades ago, these concepts were not the standard. They were totally revolutionary. It was Pete and Alice Dye who introduced these ideas and made them a permanent part of modern golf's mainstream vocabulary.
When you map it out on a timeline, his monumental achievements really come into focus. In 1980, TPC Sawgrass opens up, bringing that unforgettable island green to the world. In 1995, the rugged masterpiece of Whistling Straits arrives on the shores of Lake Michigan. Fast forward to 2008, and Pete receives the ultimate recognition with his induction into the World Golf Hall of Fame. And in 2020, he passed away at the age of 94. This whole timeline represents a lifelong commitment to challenging convention and always asking better questions of the game.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful thought. Think first, swing second. Buildings change, trees mature, and bunkers evolve over time. But ideas? Ideas endure for generations. Pete Dye's greatest monument isn't some statue or a shiny trophy. It is recreated every single day by every single golfer who pauses on the tee, studies the hole, and realizes there is more than one way to play it. So the next time you step up to a really difficult shot, ask yourself, are you just swinging, or are you actually thinking? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer of a true architectural revolutionary.